up, guys, and welcome back to another day here at Whitley Auto Works. Today is a beginner's guide into Rustoleum paint jobs. So whether you've seen it done, you've done it yourself and had issues, or you're just completely new to the game and want to know what all the fuss is about, this is pretty much a good little summary of everything that most people associate with a Rustoleum paint job. Now, what is a Rustoleum paint job? What's the difference between a Rustoleum paint job and an automotive paint job? What primer should I use? How long should I wait between coats? All that stuff we're going to cover today in this simple beginner's guide. And we're going to start off with primers, then we're going to work our way into the Rustoleum paint job itself, and then even go into some fun stuff like clear coats, pearls, stuff like that you can use to really spice up your paint job. So we're going to start off with primers real quick. Let me get set up and we'll get into it. Alright, so for purposes of today's video, I got a test fender set up behind me. If you watched my channel for a while, you've definitely seen these fenders before. I do a lot of test spray outs on this channel, and I highly recommend if you are getting into paint jobs with Rustoleum, automotive, anything, and you're new to it, definitely get yourself a fender, a card, anything, something to spray out and test, everything ahead of time with. Spray outs are crucial to learning different things, learning what works, what don't work, and I can save you a lot of headaches in the long run, opposed to you just deciding to go for it and then do it on the whole car and having issues and wonder why the heck everything went wrong, right? So, like I said, I got my test fender set up behind me. First thing you want to do is you want to clean the car really good. Dawn Dish soap is your best buddy. I'm sure you probably heard a lot of people say before, wash it with Dawn, sand it with Dawn. I mean, you can sand over primer with a little bit of Dawn in the water if you decide to wet sand, and that's the best of both worlds because it cleans it somewhat at the same time of eating into the panels and getting rid of some of the grease and wax and stuff like that. That's the stuff you don't want in your paint job because that'll cause it to react more than anything, and then you're left wondering what's going on, and next thing you know, you got to sand down the whole surface and start over again, and nobody wants that. So cleanliness is definitely a go-to when doing your paint job before you even get over into primers. I got some Prep All here. I use this a lot. This is a good wax and grease remover. I've even seen people use just regular isopropyl alcohol. Just dilute it down in a water bottle, spray it on and clean it that way. There's many ways you can do it, but bottom line is get your panels clean before you ever even think about moving into the realm of primer for any paint job, let alone Rustoleum. As far as primers go, Rustoleum is one of those paint jobs where, unlike automotive, it's not as particular to primers. Different automotive bases are very sensitive to what primer you use. Sometimes they can react and cause issues. Rustoleum, for the most part, over my 20 years experience with it, I've not had a lot of issues with the primer I use per se. However, if you decide to use some Rustoleum primers, like this rusty metal primer right here, I have heard a lot of people complain about the dry times. It does take a long time to dry, and the primers typically dry soft. And so that's just something you got to be aware of when using it. Obviously, temperature, heat, humidity plays a big factor in any paint job and application of any product, be it Rustoleum, automotive, or anything else. I've used a lot of automotive spray primers like this Nason primer right here and gotten plenty good results. So it really just comes down to preference when it comes to primers over panels and stuff like that. And like I said, prep is pretty much key, guys. Clean it up really good. Shoot your primer over your panel. Typically, if you're not doing any body work, I would wet sand from anywhere to 400 grit to 600 grit, depending on your preference, before you apply your primer. And just kind of clean up your panels. If you want to scuff it harder, that's fine too. Some of these primers have filler elements in it, and then you can sand it back that way. It really just depends, especially if you're covering body work, but we'll cover that on a separate video. But for all instances with the primers, like I said, you can use most any primer with automotive paint jobs. Just pretty much like I said, prep is key, and get everything sanded down. And then once you get it on the panel, before you're ready to paint, you're going to want to wet sand or dry sand, depending on what you're using, with anywhere from 400 to 600 grit sandpaper to get it prepped up properly and ready for your paint job. And I wouldn't go any higher than 600 because 600 pretty much is the drop-off point. You get good scratches with it, but not too heavy scratches. And you want the scratches a little bit in there just because you want a good mechanical bond. If not, I'm sure you've all seen the people with air hoses where they go over the panel after it's been painted and the clear, the paint, everything's just flaking off like nothing. And that's because they didn't have a good bond and definitely not a good mechanical bond with it. And you can use other adhesion promoters and stuff as well, but for purpose of this video, mechanical bond is always your best friend and your safest bet, other than a chemical bond with some adhesion promoter. But let's get some primer on this panel. Let's clean it up real good, and yeah, let's get it ready for some Rustoleum. Guys, so your panel's clean now. As you can see, I've already pre-sanded this one ahead of time. It's highly scuffed, and that's what you want to see. You don't want to see any shiny spots. If it's shiny, then paint's not going to adhere properly, so you want to scuff it really good and get rid of all the shininess. Now, as far as primers go, you don't have to add primer if you haven't done body work, or if you don't have any bare metal showing or anything like that. If you're just going for a paint job, you just want to paint your car, then by all means skip straight through the primer stage, wet sand it with 600, clean it really good, and you'll be good for a Rustoleum paint job, and just go ahead and straight to base coat. But yeah, for purposes of this video, we're going to prime this panel anyways, just so I can show you. I'm going to do it today with the automotive primer in a can. You can pick this up at your local Walmart or Target, or any kind of automotive place typically has this. And yeah, pick up a respirator as well. You don't want to be breathing this stuff in. It can contain harmful chemicals and stuff, and over periods of time, yeah, it's just not good. So I'm going to put my mask on real quick, and we're going to get the prime of this panel. So you've put your primer on. When doing primer, I recommend to kind of build it up over time. If your panel needs primer, I say 2 or 3 coats. Do them at about 10 to 15 minutes apart, and then give it about a good solid hour at least after your last coat before you start sanding on it. You just want to keep checking an unsuspecting place periodically on your panel and just make sure that everything's hardened like it is. If you can press on it and it feels soft, then yeah, let it dry some more, and then come back to it like you saw me do. I wet sanded it with a little bit of Dawn in my little bucket with 600 grit, and then wiped over it again with Prep All to clean it really good. So we're good to go for base coat now. So let's jump over into base coat. Alright guys, so your panel's prepped up and ready, and you're ready for your Rustoleum paint job. Now, I'm going to show you the way I've been doing it for 20 years, not really had any issues doing it this way. This is a highly controversial, highly covered topic. There are many ways to do it. Everybody's used stuff from acetone to automotive grade reducer to different hardener agents. There's many ways to get it done. But I'm going to give you a baseline beginner's kind of guide to doing this Rustoleum paint job. Alright, so you got your Rustoleum right here. If you're doing a small car like a Honda Civic, usually 2 quarts of it will be plenty of paint. If you're going with a bigger car, a full-size vehicle, a truck, you probably need a whole gallon of it, maybe even a little more depending on how big the truck is. So kind of gauge accordingly as far as that goes. As far as cutting the Rustoleum, for purposes of today's video and per the can, we're cutting it with acetone. And then you got this little can right here of catalyst hardener. You can pick the catalyst hardener up at any Tractor Supply. I'll have links in the description if you want to get any of this stuff so you can do it for your project. They make a cheaper version that is Krylon brand, and this is about $30 a can. I think the Krylon brand's like $15 at the time of this video. They make an automotive one in Tough Coat for Axalta that's only $15 a can that you can probably find at most automotive paint stores. But for purpose of this video, this is what we're using. Next, we're going to talk about mix ratios. So you got your Rustoleum, you're cutting it with acetone, and you're using this as a hardener. Now you can get by without using hardener. It's really a preference. Hardener will speed up dry times, and give you just an overall better quality product. So I definitely recommend going with with hardener to save yourself some time. All right, these little cups right here, you can pick these up at Lowe's, Home Depot, even some Walmarts carry them. They have the mixed ratios on it. So if you're intimidated by mixed ratios and you're not quite sure on that, they have them on the little cups, and you can get them anywhere from this size right here, even smaller, to even bigger, like a 5-gallon bucket size. And that'll help you out a lot. You always hear people talk about 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 2 to 1. They're talking about how much paint per acetone. Typically, a lot of people say do 3 to 1, 70% paint, 30% acetone. That's a great starting point. Typically, and like I said, this is going to vary. A lot of people have their preferences. I typically use 60% paint, 40% acetone, which is closer to a 2 to 1. I have seen a lot of people go 1 to 1, 50% paint, 50% acetone. That'll give it more of like an automotive thinness. I try to give it a little bit thicker, and if you're a first timer doing this, I definitely recommend start with 70-30, do a spray out, see if that's where you're comfortable with and you're not getting any runs and you can lay it out efficiently. If you want to, you can always thin it out more, but start there, experiment, do your spray out, and figure out what works best for you. That's ultimately what I'm going to say. I'm not going to tell you one way is better than another. These are just general guidelines. So, all right. So to start with, we got our Rustoleum. You open up this can real quick, and it's not going to take a lot. We're just doing a fender today, so definitely get your paint stored and mix your can up real good, because this stuff will sit over time and the chemicals will separate. So you want to make sure this paint is mixed up really good. That way you don't have a bunch of chunks in it and any kind of issues when it comes to that. I'm going to do all this in real time. This part of the video might be a little lengthy, but I want to give you guys a good explanation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some paint in here and get it up to one of the lines on the paint cup. Alright, so as you can see the lines on the cup where it says 4 to 1, 4 to 2, 2 to 1. These are all the different mix ratios. When I say 2 to 1, see how it says 2 to 1 to 1? See how I filled it up right there to that first 3? You got that 3 right there. So when you put your acetone in, you want to go to the next 3. And then after that, we're going to do about halfway between the 3 and the 4 of hardener. It's like a 10% of the hardener. So now I'm going to put the acetone in, as you saw on the paint cup. And I'm going to go to that 3 mark. And one thing you're going to notice is the acetone is going to sit on top of the paint. So you're going to have to mix this thoroughly. Alright, so that's the acetone. And then now this is a little can of hardener. Now, like I said, this is optional. If you don't add the hardener, it's definitely going to take a lot longer to dry. So when reading this hardener right here, typically it's this whole little pint right here to a gallon of paint, which roughly comes out to be about 8 to 1. 8 of this, 1 of this. So I'm going to do about 10% in the mix. If you get a little bit heavier with it, it's not going to be the end of the world. If you get a little bit less, it just will take a little bit longer to dry, but it's not an exact science, and a lot of people are going to say what they say. But so, especially for something this small, you really pretty much just put a little splash in it. And yeah, the next thing to do is mix it all up. We'll load up our paint gun, and we'll get to spraying this panel. Alright guys, so we got our paint gun loaded up with our Rustoleum mix. This is a V-bore paint gun. It's a 1.4 tip. I shoot at 28 psi, wide open trigger on my regulator. If you want to replicate my settings, that is full trigger pulled. I get 28 psi, and then when I let off, typically the regulator will go back up to 35. If you want to look at some of my other videos, you can see some of my regulator settings in action and as far as all that set up. But this is basically assuming you know basic stuff with the air compressor and how to set up a regulator and all that. But anyways guys, I'm going to put my mask on, and we're going to do a light coat first just to make sure we don't get no reactions. And then we're going to put on some medium coats, probably 2 or 3 medium coats till we get full coverage. And that'll be it for this step. Now, there are many other techniques. You can go a little bit heavier to try to wet it out, but you don't want to run it. Basically, you just want to get a good slick finish on it. So that's what we're going for. So you can just kind of watch me and yeah, let's get to spraying. Alright guys, so you've laid down your first coat, and this is where you want to go in and kind of look around, inspect it, check for reactions. If you have any cracking or anything like that, typically what that is you're putting your coats on either too heavy and you're not waiting long enough between coats, or you got trash or some kind of contaminant up under the paint and it's popping back through. And if that's the case, then you want to wait for it to dry, settle out, and then continue sanding everything back down, clean it properly again, and then go for it again. But you definitely want to do just a mist coat at first, just to look around, make sure you're not getting any kind of crazy reactions, especially if you're a beginner and you're not used to doing this. And inspect your panel. Let this tack up for about a good 10-15 minutes, and then you can do another coat. Medium to wet coats, I definitely recommend 20 to 30 minutes between times to put your next coat on. And then if you go from this step over to clear coat and you want to do a clear coat over top of it, you're definitely going to want to wait for about 45 minutes to an hour. But rule of thumb always is touch an unsuspecting area somewhere inside of it. And if it's tacky to touch but not pulling paint off on your finger, you're good to go for your next coat, and that's base coat or clear coat. And yeah, so we're going to let this tack up for a few minutes, and then we'll keep going. Guys, so at this point, if you're not looking to move into clear coat, your Rustoleum paint job is pretty much finished. You just wait for it to settle out, cure, dry, and you're good to go. And the results you see are actually pretty good for a cheap budget paint job. Now, if you decide to, now this is only if you want to, you can actually add clear coat over top of it, okay? And basically it will hold up fine for many years just like this. The problem is Rustoleum paint jobs, opposed to automotive paint jobs, don't have the best UV protection, and over time they're going to fall to pieces. And if you check out some of my other videos, you'll see 4- and 5-year reviews of Rustoleum paint jobs and how they've held up. But basically, if you're going to do clear coat, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can wait for this to completely cure out good for a day or 2. Go back, wet sand it with 600 grit wet sand and repeat the whole process but with clear coat. Or you can do what's highly preferred, and which one I would say do, and that's wait about 45 minutes to an hour for this to tack off really good. And basically how you know it's ready is you can touch it and it's still tacky, but you're not pulling paint off on your finger. And that's what's called painting everything and staying wet on wet. If you go to some of the forums and stuff like that, you'll hear people say it's best to go wet on wet. And what they mean by that is you have a recoat window when you paint stuff to where it's still tacky. So think of it as, say you're gluing something together, and if you push it together while it's wet, it'll get the best bond. But it hits past that level where it starts to get gummy or whatever, and if you push it together, you can get it to stay together. But it's not going to stay together the way it would if it was still somewhat wet, and it'll just pull right off. So that's a good explanation, of the best I can think of, to just kind of give you a common knowledge of wet on wet and why it's best to do this way, so you get a good chemical bond between the clear coat and the Rustoleum, and it should hold up a lot better for years to come. So what I've got here today is Speedo Coat Clear over Rustoleum paint jobs. I've done this for many years, like I said, a little over 20 years, and I've had reactions. I've had all kinds of funky things. I've had paint not drying up under clear coat. Check out the Camaro video if you haven't already. And I've always had issues with any clear coat I've used other than a 2K urethane clear coat. So Save yourself the time, the heartache, the issues, whatever else, and get yourself a good 2K urethane clear coat. Brand doesn't necessarily matter. I've used different ones, but as long as it's 2K urethane, you should be good to go. Like I said, this mix is 4-to-1 today. 4 parts clear, 1 part medium temp activator. I've put 5 ounces in the mix, so we'll do about a little more than an ounce of the activator. And good thing about good quality clear coat systems is they typically come with interchangeable activators, so you can get different speeds depending on what temperature you're painting at. Your medium temp activator is typically your go-to activator for clear coat, and that's typically from 60 to 65 degrees all the way up to 80, 85. Anything higher than 85 degrees, typically you'll want to use a slow activator to slow down the dry time, and anything lower than 60, you would want to use a fast activator to speed it up because it's too cold. So do that accordingly. For purposes of the video today, just to kind of spice things up or whatever, you guys can, when you're doing a clear coat, add a pearl to it. So what I've got here is just a generic pearl, nothing fancy, nothing too crazy. Just one I got offline. I'm not going to try and promote anything today. I'm just going to basically show you guys how you can do this. And you can also add pearl into your clear coat. Now, you can do this different ways too. You can add it into the overall mix just to give it a simple effect and just use it in all the coats of clear. You can divide it down and try to go for full coverage. Check out some of my other videos. You'll see me do it many ways. But for purposes of today's video, I just got a little mixing spoon right here. Nothing too fancy. This is a half a teaspoon. I'm just going to put like half of this, or I guess a 1/4 teaspoon, into this mix. Just something to give it a little bit of oomph, a little bit of sparkle. Nothing too crazy. I'm going to mix this up right here. And it's just a white basic pearl. Nothing too fancy, guys. I think I've shot this before, but on a white pearl video. But we're going to put this in a V-bore gun, and then we're going to do some clear on this to kind of give it a little bit of a pop and a pizzazz. So let's get into it. Alright guys, I know this is a lot like deja vu, but like I said, my V-bore gun, 1.4 tip, 28 PSI. I'm going to do a white coat first on this, all the same as I did it with the Rustoleum at first. And then we're going to do 2 or 3 follow-up coats till we get the desired effect. You guys can kind of watch me, and yeah, pretty much you're just repeating the same process you did with the Rustoleum, just with a clear coat. So, alright, I'm going to put my mask on, let's get the spraying. Alright guys, so here's the end result. Now this is Safety Blue by Rustoleum with just a generic white pearl over it. It is nothing fancy, nothing too crazy. It does give it a little bit of a sparkle and pop, and it's just a nice little accent to show you guys that you can do all kinds of stuff with Rustoleum. Alright guys, so after much time, prep, primer, Rustoleum, and clear coat, this is the end result. And I think it paid off. It's turned out pretty well. Like I said, as far as doing Rustoleum paint jobs, there are many different ways you can do things, and you kind of start here, but you can go down the rabbit hole with all sorts of things. You can do full pearl coverage paint jobs for a really cool color transition. I mean, there's just so many other things. I got plenty of videos on my channel you guys can check out there. If you want to use any of the products you saw in today's video, I'll have the links in the description. As far as coats and everything go with this, I did the light first coat and then I did 2 wet coats, and you're kind of chasing that wet line where you see it wet, and you want to move quickly, because if you stop, you're going to get a run. And you do 50% overlap coverage, so it's like, say this is your coat window. Halfway through that coat window, that's where you have the top of your spray pattern for the next one. So you kind of overlap your coats. That's a 50% overlap coverage. And if you're doing all metallics like silvers and stuff like that, and you're trying to go for full coverage, you want to do a 75% overlap, so a little bit less of a drop down with your next coat, simply because you're trying to minimize striping or tiger stripes, but we'll get into that on a future video. This was pretty much a beginner's basics guide to get you through your first Rustoleum paint job, or just to help you out with if you're having any kind of issues. But if you found this informative today, guys, please hit that subscribe button, drop me a like and comment, let me know how I did. And if you have any questions that I didn't cover in this very lengthy video, you can drop them in the comments. I'll get back to you. I'm also on forums on Facebook like Painting with Rustoleum, and there's a lot of helpful information there and some other places as well. But yeah, I think this was a pretty successful trial here today on this test fender, and I definitely recommend that if you want to do any kind of spray outs and this is your first time and you're getting used to doing, or even if you're, say you're an expert but you're trying a new product, do a spray out, do it small scale first. That way you don't run the risk of messing up a whole car or something like that. But as seen on YouTube, that takes you to my Amazon store where you can find everything I use on the channel there. We get a small kickback, but it doesn't cost you guys anything extra. And like with Amazon, you get the benefits of Prime and everything else they have to offer. But I appreciate you guys for watching today. I'm John from Whitley Auto Works. I hope you will like, share, comment, subscribe. Hope you guys have a great day. God bless, and good luck on your next Rustoleum paint job.